Hi, welcome back. It's Adrien the MountTinMan. It's Saturday, April 9th, a week after I completed the Umstead 100, which was my first 100-mile ultramarathon, and I completed that in 23 hours and 40 minutes. And that was tough. And my goal was just to break 24 hours, so 23:59. So today I wanted to talk about some issues that I had that if I had not taken care of them right away, which is the advice you get if you watch any advice for ultramarathons, is to take care of things right away. But if I had not taken care of these issues right away, they could have like blown up into something that could have either not allowed me to run under sub 24 or not finish the race at all. So I have 6 issues that I'm going to talk about, and the first one was kind of a space cadet issue, kind of a wasn't paying attention, and that was my drop bag. And so I asked for my drop bag, and then I realized I didn't put my drop bag in the pack with a pile to get moved to the second aid station. So I had rented a cabin that was about half a mile from the start-finish line, and I had my truck there, and I had put my drop bag in the passenger seat of my truck so that when I drove my truck over from my cabin to the start-finish line the morning of the race, I would see it right there, and then I would put it in the pile to go from the start-finish line to the aid station on the far side of the course. What happened was my parents were crewing, and for this race there's a line of canopies. For those who don't know that much about the race, it's 12.5 mile loops. So you come back to the start finish every 12.5 miles, and that was where one of the aid stations was, and that's where my crew was. The cell service was not that great in that area, and I have a cell phone booster on my truck, and I had driven over the night before, and I was going to take the cell phone booster off my truck and attach it to the canopy that we had with our aid station stuff for every loop. But when I got over there, Chris, who's one of the subscribers, he had a cabin over on that side, and he just said, hey, why don't you just park your truck here and then just walk over in the morning. So that's what I did. I didn't have to take the cell phone booster off of my truck and put it on the canopy. But what that meant was I just walked back to my cabin, woke up in the morning, and went right to the start-finish line. I didn't go back to my truck, so I didn't get my drop bag. I didn't put it in the pile, so it didn't make it to the second aid station. So when the race started at night or early morning, it was in the dark, and my plan was I would run the first hour or so with the headlamp, and then I would drop it off at in my drop bag at the second aid station. But when I got there and it wasn't there, then I recognized what I had done, and so I called my parents on the course I was running. I just called them and said, hey, this is what I did. Is there a way you can get, can you get it over here? Because crew was allowed on the far side. It wasn't encouraged, but it was allowed. They didn't have canopies or anything set up over there, but it was kind of like, if you need to, you can go over there. So my dad had an e-bike, and so he just put my drop bag on his back and rode he ended up doing the whole loop. So he rode over to the aid station and dropped it off, and then rode the rest of the course back, because he was just curious to see what the whole course looked like. So and now at a different race, that might have been a bigger issue, where he couldn't get to the next aid station, or it wasn't allowed. So that was my first issue, and something that I didn't need it right away, and I probably wasn't going to need it on the second loop, but it was something I definitely wanted to have. But we got that taken care of, and that was not an issue. Other than that, my Achilles is still bothering me. I'm going to switch shoes at the end of this lap. Something with a higher drop, see if that helps my Achilles. Okay, the second issue which was actually the first that I noticed, because I didn't notice that I didn't have my drop bag until I got to the aid station, was my left Achilles. I had a couple of weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the race, I started noticing a little something in my left Achilles. It wasn't painful. It was just like, oh, something's going on there, something. And so I had been taking it easy. I think 3 weeks out from the race, I got a sinus infection, so I didn't even run that week. So that kind of, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll get better. The week before the race, so 2 weeks out, I only ran like 20 miles. And then the week of the race, I only did the race. I didn't run. I know my plan was a little bit different. I was supposed to do 5 on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, and 2 on Wednesday. But I was feeling pretty good. I didn't really have the jitters as far as like, oh, I need to be out there. It was more, I need to pack everything. That's where my jitters were focused. So a mile in, and in my race video at the end, I definitely thought that was going to take me out of the race within the first 10 miles. It was really bothering me when I ran. It wasn't painful, but it was like kind of alarming to be that noticeable that early in the race. But when I was walking, so I did a lot of walk, run. When I was walking, it wasn't bothering me. And so as I went on, it became more persistent. Even when I was walking, again, it wasn't painful, but it was noticeable. But then it started becoming painful when I was running. So at mile 25, so I started with the Ultramarathon, which I really like that shoe, but it's a 0 drop. And so I tried to switch. I switched to the Salomon Ultra Glides at mile 25, I think that's a 4 or 6 millimeter drop, thinking that would relieve a little bit of pressure off of my Achilles. And that, it really didn't make that much of a difference. It was a bad choice because the Ultra Glides were not as cushioned as I had Ultra Mont Blancs, Ultra Olympus 4s, and Hoka Speed Goats, and the Salomon Ultra Glides, and those just were not as cushioned as the other 3 pair of shoes. So I only wore those for 1 lap, which is 12 and a half miles. And then I switched to the Speed Goat 4 for a lap. Those were softer, but I just felt like the toe box was kind of tight, and I didn't want that to develop into a blister. So then I went back to the Ultra Mont Blancs for at mile 50, and I think I ran 25 miles in those. And then at mile 75, I switched to the Ultra Olympus. A little bit more padding, and that kind of leads into the next, but let me finish with this. It was just bothering me the whole time, and it kind of got worse. Obviously it was bearable. I was doing it around mile 50, my right Achilles and a little bit of calf started to feel some pain and discomfort as well. I started taking some salt caps for the calf, and that kind of fixed that. And the right Achilles wasn't, it kind of got to the level where the left one was at the beginning. It wasn't that bothersome, but I was noticing it. So I had some acetaminophen in my first aid kit. I think I had them give me, I didn't take them, give me 2 at mile 75, just in case, but I didn't end up taking them until maybe like mile 95. I was drinking, and later I'll talk about this, I was drinking a lot, I was peeing a lot, like everything was functioning, and I had like an hour left of the race, and so I didn't feel like I was in any danger of doing any damage, any like kidney damage or anything like that at that point. And I was moving well at that time. I wasn't like, oh, I'm 5 miles out and it's going to take me 3 hours and here I am, popping pills or whatever. It was like I was moving well. I knew it was going to be about an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most. And so I know that is a controversial issue, and so that's why I didn't want to take anything until I basically knew I was in, and I knew I was not having any body function issues that would be compounded by taking any kind of medication. So, when I switched to the Olympus at mile 75, the Olympus is a very cushioned shoe, but I had put in a long time ago, maybe early this year, I had put in these Dr. Scholl's inserts into those Olympus, just for a little bit of extra cushion. I'd done some races that were very rocky and steep descents and things like that, and I'd done a couple of runs where my feet were kind of sore, so I put these in there, and as far as the cushion goes, this was great, but the next issue is blisters. And so if you can see on here, there's this gray. So this used to have another layer on it that was more like you have in a traditional insole. It's kind of, all I can think of is like felt. It's like, you know, a fabric that's, you know, as opposed to this, it's just kind of like slick. And what happened was about mile, 83, my foot was kind of sliding on that, and I just started feeling like kind of on the ball of my foot, maybe the start of a blister. And so I had a pacer at that point, and so I had my pacer text and say, okay, what I need is, I have this, it's called skin tack. It's like a liquid you put on your skin, and then it evaporates and gets very sticky, and then you can put the blister tape over it. So I had them get out the skin tack, the blister tape, and then I had one of my pacers pull the insoles out of my Mont Blancs so that I could put them in here. And so as I got a little closer, I was really concerned about it, so I got up to the top of Grayland, those who are familiar with the course, and I had probably like 2.5 miles to go until I got back to the aid station where I could, you know, really take care of this. But I took the shoe off and I took the insert out just to see if that was better. I took like 3 steps. The shoe was really loose, flopping all over the place. So then I took the shoe back off and stuffed this back into it. But when I got back to the aid station, I took my socks off. That caused a little bit of issue because some of the taping I had done earlier, kind of on the arch of my foot. Sometimes I get blisters like where my foot meets the very edge of like the insole. So I had already had that tape the whole time, but that kind of came off when I took the socks off. So I retaped that, and then I just did one piece of tape like right in the ball of my foot. And that took some time because I did both just in case. And but it wasn't that long. I think that lap I was, let's see, I can't remember now, but it was slower by maybe 10 or 15 minutes than plan, compared to like most of my other laps were right on plan. So it took some time to do that, but that went away as soon as I took care of that. I kind of noticed it a little bit for like a mile, and then after that, it didn't bother me at all. And today, and after the race, I didn't have any blisters at all, anywhere. So that's another example of like, if I had kept going or if I had ignored it, that could have been really painful, not only during the race, but afterwards.
We're doing all right. My issue is, I think I'm drinking too much. So I'm stopping to go to the bathroom like every 3 miles.
I see.
So I might have to back off a little bit.
Right.
All right. My next issue was kind of interesting. Required some decisions on my part as far as like, my sweat rate is 25 ounces an hour. I sweat a lot. And so I had 2 5 milliliter or half liter water bottles that I had full at every aid station with my crew, and then they gave me 2 other ones that had tailwind that were empty as far as with water, and then I would fill those up. So I was going through 2 liters of water every 12.5 miles. And so what that meant was I had to pee every 3 miles. And it was annoying. But it wasn't taking me very long. I would go into the porta potty, and I have a rest timer on my watch so I could keep track of like how much I was resting. And it was like 20, 25, 30 seconds each time. And well, that's not like the ideal thing you'd want. It wasn't a lot of time, and I've known from experience, part of the reason that I was drinking that much is because previously I was having problems getting calories down. Not down, I didn't have, I wasn't throwing anything up, not during this race, but in previous runs and training runs and previous races. I would just like burp a lot, and then I would just like kind of stop eating, or I'd start off every half hour, then I go every 45 minutes, then I go an hour, because I was just burping a lot, and I wasn't like, it wasn't a smooth experience, let's just put it that way. So I decided that it was worth it for me to have to stop and pee, because I didn't want it to progress where I wasn't able to get in my calories. So I just kept drinking and kept stopping, and like I said, it didn't take very long each time I stopped. It wasn't like, oh, maybe I think I have to go, and then you go in there and you kind of wait. And no, it was like I would go in there and I would go, and then I would carry on. So that was a decision I made, that I was like, it's worth it for me. I don't want, like, again, this is the kind of the theme. It's like this could have become a big issue if I had stopped drinking. So I just dealt with that, even though it was really annoying.
The sun, I don't think it's that hot, but like temperature wise, but there's where I am right now, there's some shade, but a lot of course, I'd say almost half the course is in the sun, and it's just brutal. You can probably see I'm covered in sweat and salt. I mean, so
the next issue was the sun. The temperatures weren't too hot. It was between at the highest it was like high 60s, low 70s, but that was kind of the upper end of like what I had trained in. I hadn't really trained in many 60-degree days. And half of the course was pretty much in the sun. There were no clouds that day, and there wasn't much shade on parts of the course. Some of the course there was shade. So that just got to me. It just, I think mile 3 and mile 4, at the end of mile 4, I was like, if this goes on for another full lap, I think that was, for me, throughout the whole race, was the most mentally like worrying. Like, I am uncomfortable. I am covered in salt. I was, like I just said, I was getting in all my water and everything, and I had tailwind and electrolytes and things like that, but it just made me really uncomfortable, and I just wasn't enjoying it. So I used sunscreen. I started with a jacket the first lap, and then I had a short sleeve shirt with arm sleeves, and then once I took the arm sleeves off, then I did sunscreen. So as far as taking care of my skin, I did that. I've learned from that. And then the start of lap 4, I think, I filled a buff with ice, and tied it on both ends. But it wasn't long enough to like tie around my neck. So I had my Solomon pack, and it has the elastics on the front to kind of keep it together. So I essentially just took the buff and stuck it right here, and it just sat right here for maybe a lap and a half. 20 miles. I had that. At one point, I did try and take it and put it in the back of on my back in my shirt, but I could feel the hard ice like on my spine. It was just uncomfortable. So when I put it here, I don't know if it was as effective cooling me, but it didn't bother me. It wasn't, didn't feel like it was jabbing into me, and it wasn't bouncing that much. So that's what I did. And again, that took care of that while I needed it. Halfway through the 5th lap, the sun started going down, and it wasn't an issue anymore. And it was, I had become clammy, like even my shirt. So as the night came on and it got cooler, I could tell that it was cool, but I was so clammy that I didn't feel cold. So maybe that was kind of an advantage, just kind of feeling kind of clammy and gross, but not feeling cold. So so that was the sun. The last issue I had was chafing, and it didn't get bad. But what happened was, going into mile 50. So this is halfway through. I just finished my 4th lap, which I just told you was 3 and 4 were really sunny, and I think I was just sweating a lot. And the Body Glide, I used Body Glide, but I also used this. I have this at the second aid station, just because I've had it forever, and I was like, well, if I need it. And then I also use this, you can see that, Tri Slide, and this is a spray, and it's like super slick. So at mile 50 I came in, and so typically, like my genitals, in between my thighs, and then kind of my backside there, that's where I chafe. And I started noticing it kind of in those areas as I was coming into the 50-mile mark. So I applied it there, but I was a little distracted because at that time, my wife, she had been there, from earlier in the day, but she was there. My parents were my crew, and then my first pacer was there, and then there was a couple that we know that was watching our dog, and they showed up with the dog, and I was also trying to eat a hamburger at the same time, and so I was a little self-conscious with people that that we know but not that well, and then trying to eat and pet the dog and things like that. And so I left the aid station doing all that, but I didn't notice, and I started chafing in an area where I don't think I've ever chafed there before. And it's kind of the front of your legs where they meet kind of your pelvis. But essentially, if you were wearing briefs, where the seam of your briefs would hit your, kind of inner thighs. And so about a mile or two after I left the 50-mile aid station, that's where I noticed that. But I didn't have any, there was nothing I could do. I didn't have anything with me. Luckily, at the second aid station, I had those things I just showed you. And so when I got there, by the time I got there, it was raw. And so I took the Body Glide and the spray and went into the porta potty and just made sure I got everything with both items. And then I carried that from then on, just in case. And I think I reapplied, but a couple of times, but every time I think it was either at an aid station or I was like in the porta potty anyway. So that was another thing where, unfortunately, I didn't get to that part of it quick enough, but I got to it quick enough where it didn't become worse and it wasn't really bothering me. It was just like one of those things where anybody who's had pretty bad chafing is like, oh, this is gonna really hurt later. But even that didn't happen. I don't know why. When I got into the bathtub, I'm a infamous bubble bath person. I just love bubble baths. So after I do long runs and things like that, I get in the bubble bath and just kind of sometimes have a beer, just kind of relax after my long runs. So I was dreading that, but I don't know if the rest of my body was hurting so much that I didn't notice or what, but I didn't get that very painful sting. So that's the lessons I have, the issues I had, and what I did to take care of them. So I hope this was helpful information as far as doing your first 100-mile ultramarathon. And these also can apply to 50Ks and things like that. But some of these issues I don't typically have in those shorter ultras that I did have in this first 50 that I did. So, for example, like the inserts with the Olympus, I've used these all spring, and I never had that issue. Things come up that don't come up on shorter races. So, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, appreciate a like or subscribe. That'd be great. After I just posted that last video about the race, my subscriber count went from I think 12 to 25. So it's exciting. It's just fun. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. And like I said last week, I might not be running. My Achilles is better, but I shouldn't run on it yet. So, but I'm still gonna try and do at least a video a week, running related. So thanks again, and I will see you next week. Thank you.